Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back. Thank you so much for clicking on this, as today we are talking about Stephen King's new book, Fairy Tale. As many of you might know, Mr. King is the master of horror books, and I myself am a very wimpy, can't do horror books, movies, none of it. So how did I fare in this? Is it a horror? Is it a fantasy as it's branded? Stick around and find out while we go over the description, details of characters, settings, plot, all the good stuff with some spoilers, and our overall book rating there at the end. So let's get into it. Look at this cover. It's just gorgeous. And the description, oh, it got me. You have a portal, fantastical. Yes, it was just, I wanted to give it a try. Now, hearing Stephen King's name, I automatically think of all of his horror books. I know he's written other series, but that's just what I think of. And the fact that it was branded as a fantasy, I was like, okay, it's not going to be scary. I can hope. There were articles, though, that were like, there's still the horror elements in this story. I'll put in the spoiler just part of the video why I think maybe they're talking about that. I never clicked on them because, I didn't want to ruin myself while reading the book. Fairy Tale was one of my most anticipated reads for September because the cover and the description sounding, it's about a boy named Charlie Reed who kind of helps this elderly neighbor that lives in a big house on top of the hill with a big dog, and by helping him he ends up getting into the cranky man's good graces, and there's a weird shed in the backyard, and when the old man dies he leaves it all to Charlie, and leaving this shed, gold, and a mysterious cassette tape saying, this fantastical story that's too hard to be believed. It is it falls all on Charlie to go through this portal to the magical world, and there's good and evil battling, cursed princesses, a sundial that'll turn back time. All this is in the Goodreads description, which I read months ago and, mostly vaguely remembered when I started the book itself. So once I finally got to the fantastical part of the book, I was a little surprised, to say the least, because parts of it I didn't remember. I remembered the shed and the portal. I remembered that part, that there would be a portal to another world that Charlie was going to become the caretaker of. True to most of King's other books, if you've read him or heard about him, he has this thing where he writes authors. And this book is written as an author, so it's older Charlie writing it down for you or whoever he's expecting to actually read it. And he tells you from the beginning that you probably won't believe his story because he wouldn't have believed it either if he didn't actually see it and live through it. But he really starts this story all the way back at the beginning when he is 7. The Goodreads description said that his mom died when he was 10, but that's not right. She died when he was 7, maybe 8, but I'm pretty sure it was 7. There was a car accident on a bridge not far from their house, and it was pretty bad. So after his mom died, his dad started drinking more and slowly became an alcoholic, and their lives went downhill for the next 4 years. Finally, though, one of his dad's old co-workers, because of course being an alcoholic, finally caught up with him, and he did lose his job. Started coming around, helping a little bit, got him convinced to go to AA, and his dad was able to clean his life up. But by this point, Charlie had been, kind of feeding himself, taking care of himself around the house, having to do stuff that most little kids, shouldn't have to do, take care of their parent, vomit, stuff like that. And when Charlie was at their lowest and he thought they were going to become homeless, and he was very afraid of this, and he just wanted his dad to get better, and they weren't very religious. He made a prayer one night, bargain prayer to God, about, if my dad can just get better and we not lose the house, I will do anything for you or someone else. And he remembers that as his dad gets better, it kind of goes to the back of his mind. But one day something happens where he does encounter the big dog at the top of the hill, which is Radar, and not very big anymore because she's very old. And Mr. Budowich, I think I said that right. I listened to the audiobook. I should remember how to say it. And Howard has fallen off a ladder and severely broken his leg. Like, the bone was coming out. It's very bad. He had to have one of those things with metal rods put into his leg. And as an 80-something-year-old man, it was, of course, not pleasant. He was a very cranky old man at that point, too. But Charlie saw this as, this is how he would fulfill his bargain. And so He takes care of Radar as he calls 911, gets Mr. Bodowich to the hospital. He tells him, I'll take care of your dog, lock up your house. And he keeps coming back. He goes and visits him in the hospital. He says he'll cut his grass. He says he'll fix this or that. And keeps feeding Radar while Mr. Bodowich is in the hospital. And slowly, due to Charlie, being a good kid, this lets Mr. Bodowich start to trust him. And being that Charlie still wants to fulfill that bargain, he feels he still has to do more. When Mr. Bodowich comes home from the hospital, he agrees that over his spring break, he's going to stay there with him and be like a caretaker for him. Because he can't get up and go anywhere hardly. So that's what he does. And this actually slowly starts to take over more of Charlie's life, which I feel is bad. As it said in the description, Mr. Bodowich does die and he leaves everything to Charlie. And this is where the fantasy starts. Because until now, it has just been pretty normal as a teenage kid taking care of an old man and an old dog in Illinois. There's been some bits of like how Charlie was a horror fan, like horror movies and books when he was younger, and he remembers bits of fairy tales his mom told him. That's about all we got. Otherwise, perfectly normal. And I think at this point, you're probably maybe 30-something, 40-something% into the book. At this point, though, he listens to the cassette tape that Mr. Bodowich left him, and he kind of doesn't believe it, but there is the gold, and he never figure out where the gold came from. So, yeah, he goes into the shed and finds the portal. When Charlie first gets to this other world, though, it is very dark and gray. It is constantly covered by clouds, like you can't see the sky, except sometimes the 2 moons mentioned in the description the clouds will open up and you can see the 2 moons going across the sky right after the other. But there's red poppies everywhere and giant wildlife, like bunnies the size of cars. The grossest thing had to be the first thing he encountered was a giant cockroach. Why did it have to be a cockroach? There were grasshoppers later, Why couldn't it have been a grasshopper? It's just gross. The other world, though, it would be beautiful. And by the end of the book, it is. It's changing back to its goodness state, but it's been corrupted. It's been severely corrupted. All the color leached out, and think something's wrong with the people, which we'll get into later. And it's up to Charlie to put all the weight of the world pretty much on his shoulders, but really he's just trying to save the old dog. But we'll move on. Charlie's a really good person. He does, though, as a character, display a huge amount of maturity for a 17-year-old kid, but the way King wrote him is a very good grasp too with morality, because he does know that he has this darkness inside of him, because he did go through this very rebellious phase of angst and stuff while his dad was drinking. Of course, he was angry. But as he got older, he seems to be a very outstanding student athlete. He volunteers with some other groups at school. So he's a very good growth character, showing both sides, of a person, that there can be darkness and there can be goodness, and that you're always going to have both sides of that. I think that was written very splendidly. I'm going to get into the spoilers now, so if you do not want to watch this, you can skip to the next chapter in the video that will just be into the book rating and final thoughts. First thing is, he's a 17-year-old kid, right? I get he's a very mature 17-year-old kid, and it kind of shows that he's a good person, I guess, that he wants to stay and take care of this dog and this old man, and he believes, it's his bargain with God. Why does he have to drop everything in his life, though? Why does he have to be written as to he's going to give up on the 2 sports that he plays, even though, he's trying to, do things like Key Club and other voluntary things that'll look good for his college application. So he's going to quit playing sports that he likes, pretty much, that he thinks, he's vaguely good at them. But he quits baseball on a whim, mostly. The coach yelled at him. He quits because he needs to go spend time taking care of Mr. Bodowich more, help make sure Radar's getting fed. Really? Why? And then later, when it's time to sign up for football practice, to make sure that, he's like, I'm just not going to do it because I don't want to be at practice and maybe Radar passes away, because she was very sick at that point. But why? I mean, even Mr. Bodowich is like, don't. I will leave my house. Me, this reclusive person, will leave my house and come there and watch these games if you play. And when Charlie says, what if Radar dies while I'm there? He just gives in? No! Fight the kid. Tell him, no, we're going to come. We're going to come and watch you play because you're not going to throw away your life for my old self. Somebody, I get, sure, he's doing a kind of noble thing. But it is. He's throwing away opportunities for himself to do the football. I get that if he had never done it, then some things wouldn't have happened. Possibly. But it still could have taken place in that way. Because he still would have been there after practice. He still would have gone to see him and spent pretty much just as much time with him. They already had the bond. Still would have gotten the house. I'm quite sure of it. As I said earlier, that there are some articles that are saying that this is a horror. The only bit of that I could see that this might have a little bit of horror instance is the body horror part. Because the people of this fantastical world, who does have a name, and I can remember it, except for how it's pronounced a little bit. So we're just not. But the people of this world have all been cursed by their current ruler, who is cursed himself a little bit. But when he got a hold of this dark magic godly power or whatever, he cursed the land with this graying curse, where it leaches the color out of everybody, out of your skin, hair, the world around you, and then it deforms you. Like your fingers turn almost into flippers, your face goes away, you're like the skin literally covers your eyes, your mouth. Yeah. It was pretty awful. It was very, very awful. And the other members of the royal family that did not die, like I said, the princess and everything, they all received other curses because their blood makes them immune from the graying curse. It never really got into how that happened though. But the princess no longer has a mouth. She has like, is it a dime-sized blemish next to where her lips would be that she literally has to cut open to stay alive. She has to cut it open and like drink this puree stuff to be able to stay alive. Her uncle lost his eyesight. Eyes are completely gone. And her great aunt cousin lost her ears. No ears there. It's just flat. Which that lady was a trip. So yeah, that was probably the only bit I could see as horror, other than the ruler himself. He had tentacly things. That's how it transformed him in a lot of ways. He was really gross. His skin was green. I don't want to think about it anymore. So that was kind of gross, but that was the only bit that I could think of as maybe horror. And the last spoilery bit would actually be about the end. For how long and descriptive Charlie's journey is, like I said, you don't even get to the fantastical bit of going through the portal to the other world until right before the halfway point, I feel like. So you're in Illinois and all the him's taking care of it, the details of bonding and all of this, and him slowly finding out stuff about Mr. Buttiwich. And then you go through the portal and you're learning about the world. He comes back, gets the dog, tries to take her to save her with the sundial that'll make her younger again, and all the journey, all the details and the longness of the journey. And then when he's caught and those details and finding out what he has to do to save the world, it is just the actual indie bit. We beat it. It kind of just happened. It was like, he's rescued. Go kill the bad guy. Let's do it in this chapter. Bad guy's gone. A chapter of recovery and going home and ending the book. So much detailed description all the way there, and then it's over. It's done. Okay. I was almost getting to the point as is getting less and less time left in the book. I was like, maybe this isn't going to be a standalone, because there's not much time left to do this. And then it was just done. I know it's got to be a standalone because, well, I say that, but I mean, they could always go back and do something. But the way it ended is definitely sounds like it's going to be only a standalone. The epilogue and everything explained, what happened between here and here, like where the author point is now, and that Radar's with him and everything. So yeah, very fast. That's all I'm going to say about that. I gotta stop looking at my notes. I'm sorry. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. I loved the fantastical bits that he wove through there, how he did connect different things like fantastical fairy tales to elements in this other world that, I don't know, it's like it wasn't directly that, but Charlie's mind was putting the two things together as connected, or the fairy tale and our world in Illinois, and how, you know, it's all a story leading him up to this point. It was good. I loved the way how he made Charlie think that, how he showed it to us to make us feel like it too. I loved Radar. She was such a sweet girl, and his bond with her, it was really sweet, even if I don't completely get some of the things he chose to do. But it is what turned Charlie into the hero, as he said he was always destined to be, and put his life on the course that he was. So overall, it was a 4-star read. It was highly enjoyable. I'm so glad that it was not a horror book, that it came out the way it did. The ending wrapped it up. It was a nice ending. No second guessing things, no questions unanswered pretty much. Like at all, I'm pretty sure he answered like everything there at the end. So if you were looking for a horror book, this is not for you. If you want just a good fictional fantasy book, then yes, you will highly enjoy this probably. It is not super long, so it's very quick read to knock out over a weekend. If you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you will check out some of my other review videos, vlogs, unboxings, general bookish content that we do here. If there's any books specifically that you would like me to read and review for you guys, I'd be more than happy to check those out. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't joined us already, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I hope you guys are having a lovely weekend, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys!